Chapter 12. Marvellous Medicine number 2. They were in the kitchen now, and the big saucepan was on the stove. All of the things that Mr. Cranky had bought were lined up, ready to go near the sink. "Come along, my boy," cried Mr. Cranky. "Which one did you put in first?" This one," said George. "Golden Gloss hair shampoo." He emptied the bottle into the pan. "Now the toothpaste," George went on. "And the shaving soap. And all of the face cream. And the nail varnish." "Keep at it, my boy," cried Mr. Cranky, dancing around the kitchen. "Keep putting them in. Don't stop. Don't pause. Don't hesitate. It's a pleasure, my dear fellow, to watch you work." One by one, George poured and squeezed everything he had into the saucepan. With everything so close at hand, the whole job didn't take him any more than 10 minutes. But when it was done, the saucepan didn't somehow seem to be quite as full as the last time he did it. "Now what did you do?" cried Mr. Cranky. "Did you stir it?" I boiled it," said George, but not for long, and I stirred it really well." So Mr. Cranky lit the gas under the saucepan, and George stirred the mixer using the same wooden spoon as before. "It's not brown enough," said George. "Wait a minute, I know what I've forgotten." "What?" cried Mr. Cranky. "Tell me quick, because if we've forgotten even one tiny little thing, it won't work, at least not in the same way." "A quarter of brown gloss paint," George said. "That's what I've forgotten." Mr. Cranky shot out of the house and into his car like a rocket. He sped down to the town and bought the paint and rushed back in again. He opened the can in the kitchen and handed it to George. George poured the paint into the saucepan. "Ah, that's better," said George. "That's more like the right colour." "It's boiling," said Mr. Cranky. "It's boiling and bubbling. George, is it ready yet?" "Yes, it is ready," said George. "At least I hope it is." "Right," said Mr. Cranky, hopping about. "Let's test it. Let's give some to a chicken." "My heavens alive! Why don't you calm down a bit?" Mrs. Cranky said, coming into the kitchen. "Calm down?" cried Mr. Cranky. "You expect me to calm down? And here we are mixing up the world's greatest medicine discovered in the history of the world. Come along, George. Dip a cupful out of the saucepan, get a spoon, and we're going to go and give some to a chicken, just to make absolutely certain we've got the right mixture." Outside in the yard, there were several chickens that George hadn't had any of George's magic medicine number 1. They were pecking about in the dirt in that silly way that chickens do. George crouched down, holding out some of Marvellous Medicine number 2. "Come on, chicken," he said. "Good chicken, chicken. A white chicken with little black specks on its feathers looked up at George. It walked over and went peck. The effect that Marvellous Medicine number 2 had on this chicken was not quite the same as the effect it produced from Marvellous Medicine number 1, but it was very interesting. Whoosh! Shrieked the chicken as it shot 6 feet up into the air and came back down again. Then sparks started flying out of its beak as though somebody was sharpening a knife on a grindstone inside its tummy. Then its legs began to grow longer and longer and longer and longer. Its body stayed the same size, but its legs got longer and longer and longer still. "What's happening to it?" cried Mr. Killy-Cranky. "Something's wrong," said George. The legs went on growing, and the more they grew, the higher up into the air went the chicken's body. When the legs were about 15 feet long, they stopped growing. The chicken looked perfectly absurd with its long, long legs and its ordinary little body just perched high up on top. It was like a chicken on stilts. "Oh, my sainted aunts!" cried Mr. Killy-Cranky. "We've got it wrong! That chicken's no good to anybody. It's all legs. Nobody wants to eat chicken's legs." "I must have left something out," said George. "I know you've left something out," cried Mr. Killy-Cranky. "Think, boy, think. What was it that you left out?" "I've got it," said George. "What was it? Quick!" Flea powder for dogs," George said. "You mean you put in flea powder?" "Well, no wonder it went wrong." "Did, a whole carton of it. Well, then that's the answer." "Wait a minute," George said. "Did we have brown shoe polish on our list?" "We did not," said Mr. Killy-Cranky. "I used that too," said George. "No wonder it went wrong," said Mr. Killy-Cranky. He was already running to his car, and soon he was heading back down into the town to buy more flea powder and more shoe polish.